Just a few moments ago, Wendy Kelly, Director of the Arkansas Department of Correction, read the following statement in the execution chamber. A lethal injection was administered at 10:52 p.m. and the coroner has pronounced Kenneth D. Williams dead at 11:05 p.m. this 27th day of April, carrying out the sentence of the Circuit Court of Lincoln County, Arkansas, on a charge of capital murder, tried in that court by a duly impaneled jury, convicted and sentenced to death. Such sentence was entered on August 30th, 2000. I'm awaiting a copy of inmate Williams' last words. As soon as I receive those, I will return to the podium and provide those to the pool. Also, I do want to make you all aware that I was informed that at approximately 10:55 p.m., Kenneth Williams did shake for approximately 10 seconds. At 10:55 p.m., Kenneth Williams did shake for approximately 10 seconds. And once again, as soon as I receive his last statement, I will return to the podium and provide that to the pool. Media witnesses are en route back to the center. And I humbly extend my sincerest of apologies to the families I have senselessly wronged and deprived of their loved ones. The families of Dominique Hurd, Gerald Jenkins, Cecil Boren, Michael Greenwood. I was more than wrong. The crimes I perpetrated against you all was senseless. I humbly beg your forgiveness and pray you find the peace, healing, and closure you all deserve. To Kayla Greenwood and the whole Greenwood family, the acts of grace, forgiveness, and mercy you demonstrated toward the person who had taken so much from you by bringing to me in prison my own baby and grandchild, right before my scheduled execution. No rapist, murderer, terrorist, butcher, barbarian, not even old Beelzebub himself could withstand such a blast of glorious light and continue to walk in darkness. And it was signed Minister Kenneth D. Williams, Arkansas death row preacher. That statement was followed by the following, and these are the words of Kenneth Williams also, quote, I am not the same person I was. I have been transformed. Some things can't be undone. I seek forgiveness. The next words will be spoken in my native language tongue. At which point he spoke in what would be commonly described as in tongues. The extent of what we have at this time. It was within that 5-minute gap at approximately 10:55 that for approximately 10 seconds Williams did shake. To reiterate, at that point he had only received the midazolam. At the end of that 5-minute interval, which would have been approximately 10:57, a consciousness check was conducted. It was determined at that point that he was unconscious, and the injection procedure proceeded from there.
We'll come back to the we'll come back to the final statement and everything that transpired with Williams and his last remarks. But since we're all on deadline, I'll start with what we all have in our notes as coughing, convulsing, lurching, jerking with sound, even with the microphone turned off. We were actually able to hear things in the witness area from the execution chamber. The execution started at 10:52. That's when the announcement was that they were going to start the execution. At the time, Mr. Williams was speaking in tongues, and during that, they announced that they were proceeding with the execution. And toward the end of his prayer, he came back to English and made a statement which tailed off as the drug took effect. There's a little bit of breathing, blowing out through his cheeks and stuff like that. But at 10:55, after having breathed through his nose throughout the execution, his body lurched forward as though we were trying to describe how to describe it. It was like if you're on a bumpy road and you hit a bump and your body gets thrown forward. It happened about 15 times in quick succession. This is about 4 minutes into the execution. This would have been before the consciousness check. This would have been, Solomon's correct, this would have been only with the midazolam having been administered. And it took about 15 times, pretty quick succession, maybe no more than 10 or 15 seconds. That slowed another 5 times at a slower rate, and then in my notes, I wrote down each time it happened and got to 20, and then it was over. After the 20th lurch forward, at that time, Mr. Williams was breathing through his mouth, and up until this point, he had been breathing through his nose, and so there are other times in our notes where it appeared as though he was striving for air, that he was, I think Knowles used the term in his notes, gasping. I had labored breathing, but it was a clear attempt to obtain oxygen. At that point, we didn't have the lurching anymore, but it was a pronounced heavy breaths to draw oxygen in. By 10:57, this would have been about 2.5 or 3 minutes after the lurching, jerking, whatever we want to call it. His respiration slowed, but he was still breathing through the mouth at that time. Again, every time he would open his mouth, or every time he would take a breath, it would be through the mouth this time.
Was the pronounced heavy breathing?
It was still heavy breathing. He attempted to draw breath until 10:59. It was clear. It was clear that he was in trouble. He had just received 500 milligrams of midazolam. That's what would be one of the effects of the drugs. But it was clear after the convulsions, jerking, whatever, it was clear that he was striving for breath. That was would probably be the best way to describe it. They Knowles used the term chest pumping. Just sort of like that he was clearly trying to breathe.
Kelly, and at that point, no drug other than midazolam had been.
At that point, no other drug should have been administered. I'm not saying what had happened, but according to the protocol, we had not yet reached the 5-minute mark, and so under the state protocol, at that point, he should have only received the midazolam.
Did you say there were 2 periods where he was lurching forward? You said 20 lurches, and before that you said about 10 or 15?
No, the total is 20. There were 15 rapid ones, and then 5 additional immediately after at a slower rate. And so all 20 came together. The first 15 were well, you guys time me if you want, because this is about the pace that it was. And then after about 15, then it slowed, and then when he stopped, he was breathing through his mouth rather than his nose. At late in the 10:57 minute, the attendant checked his pupils, touched his eyeball for a consciousness check. I'm sorry, this is late in the 10:57 minute. This is right before 10:58. At the 10:58 mark, he got underneath the leather strap and did the chest rub in an effort to get a reaction out of Mr. Williams. The breathing continued after 10:58. Also, the 10:58 mark, during this or immediately afterward, there was either a moan or a groan. We couldn't agree on what word to use, but it was something that was audible within the witness chamber on the other side of the glass wall. It was low. It was barely audible, yet it was audible in a room of 27 people on the other side of a glass wall. So it was something of which we made note, because again, it was something that even without a microphone we could and like I said, I don't know if it was brief, and this would have been at around the time of the consciousness check. And so, sorry, did somebody?
Yeah, I I apologize, but you said in the beginning, coughing, convulsing, jerking, and what else?
The words that we have in our notes were coughing, convulsing, lurching, jerking with sound.
Kelly, is there a second clear consciousness check after the 10:57 consciousness check? Even with labored breathing continuing to 10:59, is there a second consciousness check at that point?
After that, I would say they were relatively continual. There were other checks after the 5-minute mark. I mean, he checked. He went to the eyeballs again. He went to the chest rub again.
But not a clear 5-minute wait after the 10:57 check and then another consciousness check?
No, there was the second consciousness check did not come at 11:02, which would have been 10 minutes after the start. It was a constant monitoring, relatively constant monitoring after the 10:57 check that they can, that it continued by 10:59. He was still breathing. Again, he was still breathing. His head would go back slightly with each respiration. Again, like I mentioned earlier, attempting to draw breath in. The attendant was checking the IVs at that point, and then late in the minute of 10:59, he was still we were able to see his right hand. His thumb was up like that for the first 4 or 5 minutes, and then gradually it just came down, just relaxed, and it probably ended like that. It didn't clench all the way, and it never did this, but it was upright. It was like he was holding it up. I mean, he wasn't giving a thumbs up, but it was clearly up, and then it just faded during the course of the execution. But at no point did there was any kind of clenching as though he was in pain or was struggling against something, even while he was convulsing. And so I'm not even sure that he would have been aware that he was convulsing. But I mean, he was clearly attempting to get oxygen, or something was happening.
From what time to what time was he coughing, convulsing, jerking?
It all happened in the minute of 10:55. 20 seconds, maybe? Maybe less. Well, guys, what do you think?
About that long.
Yeah, I mean, it was 15 rapid breaths, and then 5 slower breaths, and then it was over.
So you're saying that it was more than just a shake for 10 seconds?
I mean, I could reenact it and time it, but I'm not going to do it right now.
Where were the IVs on his arm, on his body?
Where what? One. It appeared to be one in each arm.
So it was for longer than 10 seconds, though?
I mean, 15. You can take 15 rapid breaths, and I mean, in 10 seconds if you need to, and whatever made him need to. I mean, he was breathing rapidly, and if you can get 15 quick breaths in 10 seconds, then it's possible that it was 10 seconds.
I'm Jody Eford, and this is my sister Holly, and I'm speaking on behalf of our family. I would like to thank the governor for his persistence and his help in this bringing part of this chapter in our life to a close. I also would like to thank the Attorney General's office for their diligence, the Arkansas Department of Correction for their flawless carrying out of this matter. They were very professional. They took excellent care of our family. I also would like to thank our family that has been here to support us, and all the friends and the prayers that we have received from countless people. I did witness the execution. Kenneth Williams showed no change in his facial expression to exhibit any form of pain. Any amount of movement that he might have had was far less than any of his victims.
is his wife doing? I noticed she was also in the chamber. How is she taking this, your mother?
Of course, she's very sad. I mean, there are other things in our lives that they're going on right now that make this even harder, but she's very sad. She loved my father, as did we all.
Where were we? Do you want me to go back to the final statement? He went off script for the final statement before he spoke in tongues. You guys, you want that now? You want to go over convulsing and jerking again?
No, go over the final statement and how that's into the execution.
Okay. Wendy Kelly asked Mr. Williams if he wanted to make a statement, and she stood over him and actually held up a sheet of paper like that for him to read. And that would be the portion that Solomon would have given us all earlier. Miss Kelly held it. I'm sorry. Yeah, Miss Kelly held it in this position for him to read. And then when that was over, he said that he had more of a statement to make. He said, "I'm not the person that I was, but I've been transformed when I gave my life to Christ. I can't undo. I only seek your forgiveness." And then he spoke about how his next to last words would be a prayer to God, and he started speaking in tongues. This is late at the 10:51 mark and going into 10:52. He spoke in tongues probably 30 seconds, 45 seconds. During the prayer, one of the attendants in the room, not the regular one, but another one who I believe to be the warden, said, "Officials are ready to proceed with the execution." At that time, presumably, the execution started. Mr. Williams' prayer continued probably another 20, 25 seconds, and then it was clear when the drug was taking effect because his speaking in tongues slowed. He reverted to English and said, "The words that I speak will forever be, will forever," and then it went into, it just faded off. I mean, he continued to speak, but it was undiscernible, and then there was silence. It was, "The words that I speak will forever be, will forever," and then it was mumble, and then it was gone.
At 10:57, how would you describe the breathing between 10:57 and 10:59 when you see the end of the labored breathing?
Knowles had in his notes perhaps gasping. He had gasping. I had still heavy breathing, as did Donna, and she had gasping. I had labored breathing.
It was very.
Yeah, I mean,
It was faster than a regular breath.
yeah.
He was just trying to draw in air.
Yeah,
He could not.
yeah.